Everybody loves a good mystery, but only when we get an answer to the mystery at the end of it. When we as average civilians cannot explain something, we turn to an expert for assistance. But there are some things that even experts and scientists can't provide an adequate explanation for. From strange sculptures carved by our distant ancestors to possible crashed alien spaceships. We've got some genuinely baffling mysteries in this video. So watch it and see if you can provide answers to the riddles that the world's greatest minds haven't solved. The Zipporah Keidel has been causing controversy among scholars ever since it surfaced in the Zipporah River in Poland in 1848. It's one of the very few remaining artifacts of pre-Christian Slavic spiritual beliefs that have survived to the modern age and should be correctly classified as balwan, a wooden block designed as a tribute to a deity. For a long time, it was thought to be an offering to the Slavic god Svetovid, although that belief has now dissipated. In truth, nobody has ever been able to accurately decipher the meaning of the symbols and bas-reliefs carved onto its side. One popular theory is that the three tiers of the idol represent the three levels of existence as the Slavic people understood them: the physical realm in the middle, the underworld below it, and the gods in the heavens above. It was likely buried to preserve it when Christianity came to Poland during the 10th century, and then the burial site was drowned when the bed of the Zipporah River moved during the 19th century. The drought brought it to the surface, but didn't bring any knowledge of its meaning along with it. There are many examples of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs that contain images that seem otherworldly. Frequent depictions of animal-headed creatures and strange objects in the sky have long fed beliefs that the ancient Egyptians were visited by extraterrestrials. But there's a more terrestrial appearance to some of the hieroglyphs that appear in the Temple of Seti I at Abydos. The confusing thing is that the terrestrial objects they represent should have been unknown to the people of the era. Take a good, long look at these carvings and try to tell us that they don't look like helicopters. The helicopters appear to be surrounded by other flying vehicles, which some have interpreted as either missiles or planes. We've been able to translate the text beneath them as reading, "He who repulses the 9 enemies of Egypt." Perhaps repulsing those 9 enemies was a lot easier when you had a fleet of helicopters on your side, and your enemies had little more than sticks and stones. All over the world, our ancestors liked to make sculptures and carvings of humanoid figures. But those humanoid figures sometimes looked a long way away from being human. That's the case with the statues you'll find on the French Polynesian island of Nukuhiva, all of which appear to have the heads of reptiles. Research and archaeology tell us the first humans to arrive on Nukuhiva landed about 2,000 years ago and came from Samoa. We would therefore expect to see similar statues in Samoa dating back to the same time, but none existed. What inspired their design if the Samoans weren't already making them at home? Could they be representations of a strange race of humanoid creatures that the islanders found waiting for them on their new home? The only place in the world that similar designs have been seen is ancient Samaria. But how could the two cultures have been in contact with each other all those years ago? Perhaps they weren't. Maybe these reptile people were in contact with both of them. Over the years, there have been many reports of alien spaceships crash landing on Earth. But those reports are quickly followed by official explanations from the governments of the countries the objects landed in. The official account of how 3 unidentified flying objects came crashing out of the sky and landed in Qiqihar, China in 2014 leaves a lot to be desired. The Chinese government says that objects are 3 chunks of an exploded Russian satellite, but you'll have a hard time finding a Russian satellite design that corresponds with the shape of the mysterious artifacts. One of them is a solid steel dome that looks exactly like a classic UFO. Perhaps we shouldn't rule out the official explanation, though, A Russian rocket that was supposed to carry a communications satellite into orbit had exploded shortly after takeoff a few days earlier, and the Chinese location borders the far east of Russia. Sometimes the obvious explanation is the correct one, but we're still not satisfied that the spherical object looks like it was designed by any Earth-bound space program. The Ark of the Covenant is an object so legendary that it's taken on a mythical quality. There's even been an Indiana Jones movie based on its story. Many scholars believe that the object really did exist at one point in time, and that if it still exists right now, it might be hidden away somewhere in Africa. If the stories are true, the Ark is a wooden chest coated in gold, within which the 2 stone tablets delivered to Moses on Mount Sinai reside. In other words, the Ark hosts the original copies of the 10 Commandments. For years, it was thought to be in Israel, but then it disappeared, with various theories posted as to where it went next. One of those theories says that it was taken to Ethiopia, and now might be evidence to support that conclusion. Christian monks within the country say that the Ark is inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in the city of Axum. When the Smithsonian Magazine sent a journalist to investigate, he encountered a man who claimed to have lived inside the church for his entire life and had no name other than the guardian of the Ark of the Covenant. He will only ever leave the church when he dies, and someone will then replace him and take over his duties. Of all of the structures that our ancient ancestors created, walls appear to be the ones that survive with the most regularity. Hadrian's Wall is still standing in England in the same place that the ancient Romans built it. Everyone knows of the Great Wall of China, which can be seen from space. Far fewer people have ever heard of the Khat Shabib, which might be the most impressive wall of them all. The 2,000-year-old construction runs for more than 93 miles through the desert of Jordan, and yet it serves no discernible purpose. We didn't even know it was there until a British diplomat saw it by chance when his plane flew over the desert in 1948. If it had been intended to be a defensive wall, it would have been taller, and there's no obvious city or population center to defend there anyway. It might be an agricultural wall, but there's no obvious sign of historical agriculture in the area. It's almost as if someone built a wall nearly 100 miles long purely for their own enjoyment. There are many examples of cities and towns that are named because of a geographic feature that's contained within them. For example, the city of Rockwall in Texas, USA, is so named because of the long, narrow rock wall that sits below the modern city. Everyone who lives in the city knows it's there, but nobody knows how it came to be there. They can't even agree on whether it was built by human hands. Some experts have suggested that the arrangement of stacked rocks might be a natural phenomenon, but on appearance alone, that seems to be unlikely. The wall both surrounds and runs beneath the city, and it's so large that not all of it is yet to be excavated, even though excavation began in 1852. An archaeologist named Robert T. Hill inspected portions of it in 1901 and decided that it was nothing more remarkable than a sandstone dike. But if he'd been given a chance to investigate all the examples of it that have been dug up since, he would probably change his mind. The concretion of sedimentary rocks can cause strange patterns to appear in them, but nowhere else has it created a pattern that looks so much like carefully placed bricks. There's only one thing we can say with certainty about the ancient jade discs of China. They were used in ancient burial rituals. They've been found in tombs dating back 5,000 years and are exclusively discovered placed on top of corpses of Chinese aristocrats. That meant that only very important people were honored with the discs, but we don't know what they represent or why the people who made them would choose to carve a material as hard and challenging to work with as jade. The Liangzhu culture exclusively used the discs in the late Neolithic era. On each disc is a series of symbols depicting objects in the sky, but they defy any attempt at translation or understanding. No metal tools dating back 5,000 years have ever been found in the area, so we can't even say how ancient stoneworkers would have been able to carve such intricate patterns into the rock. There are no examples of writing from the time to assist us, so their exact purpose will probably always be unknown. Staying on the topic of mysterious discs for a moment, a whole collection of them was found in Volgograd, Russia in 2015. Stone discs with this kind of appearance aren't unusual, but they contain an element that can't easily be explained, and that element is tungsten. The high-density material can sometimes occur naturally, but is more commonly found in military technology and aircraft. The team that found it might be a little biased in their assessment of the artifacts. They're a gang of professional UFO hunters known as Kosmopoisk. They insist that they've dated the rocks and found them to be 1 million years old, and say their shape and composition is compelling evidence of alien design. Scientists are naturally a little more skeptical and say that although the rocks are unusual, there's nothing scientifically wrong with the idea that they occurred naturally and have been shaped over time by weathering and erosion. They still can't explain why there were a dozen of them at this site and nothing like them anywhere else, though. Although Mexican and Peruvian sites usually get all the attention when it comes to ancient monuments in South America, Brazil has a mysterious artifact all of its own, in the shape of the Inga stone. Found in Inga in the northeast of the country, the rock is over 150 feet long and 15 feet high, and is covered in carvings and inscriptions that scholars have spent decades trying to interpret with very little success. Some of them look a little like fruits and animals, and others look like basic interpretations of constellations of stars in the sky. There were native people living in the area until the 18th century, and although it's reasonable to suspect those natives made the carvings, we don't know precisely when or why. A theory postulated by Spanish engineer Francisco Pavia Alemany during the 1970s says that every bowl symbol carved into the rocks is a cluster of stars, with smaller markings around the bowls indicating smaller or fainter stars. He's been able to demonstrate some connection between the position of the carvings and the position of the stars. If his theory is correct, it will make the Inga stone the most significant archaeoastronomical monument in the world. The Indus Valley is rich in archaeological wonders, and scientists have been able to explain most of them satisfactorily. They're still struggling with the so-called Lady of the Spiked Thrones, though. It's a one-of-a-kind sculpture that's around 4,700 years old, and nothing that looks even vaguely like it has ever been found before or since. The fanciful name of the piece comes from a figurine of a female figure who appears to sit on a throne at the head of the sculpture. But it's the shape of the sculpture that has led to the most controversy. It looks like a grand boat, but boats this elaborate aren't thought to have existed at this point in time. There's also no clear reason why there should be a carving of the head of a bull at the front of the boat. It doesn't fit with any religious or spiritual belief that we're aware of in the Indus Valley area of the time, and it doesn't have any historical context that we've ever discovered. Who was the Lady of the Spiked Throne, and who made this tribute to her? The Ajanta caves in Maharashtra are a popular tourist attraction. Tour guides are happy to take money from visitors and show them around the site, but they aren't able to explain the full story of who carved them into the rock or why. The caves are full of priceless Buddhist relics and appear to have been in a perpetual state of building for more than 8 centuries. The earliest network of caves was carved into the rock around 2,200 years ago and contains frescoes considered to be sacred by Buddhists. It wasn't until the year 600 that the final cave was completed, by which time murals were still being added. But the standard of the artwork appears to have suffered a little down through the centuries. Bizarrely, the caves have been built to perfectly resemble wooden temples, even including imitations of wooden rafters and beams in the ceiling, even though none are required from a structural point of view. The intricacy of some of the designs would be considered complex even by modern standards, so how they were designed and built before the Common Era is a question scientists can't answer. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.